The Lifestylist, episode 155, featuring Kyle Kingsbury.
I'm Luke Story, a former celebrity fashion stylist and founder of School of Style. For the past 20 years, I've been relentlessly dedicated to my deepest passion, designing the ultimate lifestyle based on the most powerful principles of health and spirituality. The Lifestylist Podcast is a show dedicated to sharing my discoveries and the experts behind them with you. This episode of the Lifestylist Podcast is presented by my homies over at Onnit.com. Onnit.com is a health and fitness juggernaut. These guys are super dedicated to delivering all things human optimization to a vast customer base of athletes, fitness gurus, and entrepreneurs like myself. It's a biohacker's haven, to be honest with you. And I've been using tons of their stuff for years, and I'm really stoked to be working with them on the show. So on any given day, if you walked into my kitchen, here's what you would find. You would find a bottle of their krill oil, which I take all the time. Their flavored MCT oils, which are like a cheat. Remember those coffee creamers that are super toxic but kind of delicious? Vanilla, hazelnut. I always liked those, but I just knew they're really bad for you. They have healthy versions of those where basically you just add a squirt of their flavored MCT to whatever coffee drink and it's on point. And actually they have a really good coffee too, which I just recently got turned on to. It doesn't have any mold or any weird stuff in it. Very good single origin coffee, which is delicious and hella strong though, I'm warning you. And then also their flagship product, Alpha Brain, which like anyone who's into biohacking and nootropics knows about Alpha Brain. That was the first product of theirs that I tried many years ago and still use. And then my current fave is something called New Mood, which is an herbal blend that just totally chills you out. It's great for anxiety and when you're just kind of too amped up on their coffee, to be honest. Use that to kind of calm down, and it's great for sleep too. So they just have a ton of stuff that I like, fitness products, and I don't know, it's just a massive company. I've been to their headquarters. It's a great operation. I really believe in the people behind it and what they're doing. So head over to onnit.com/Luke and get 10% off all foods and supplements. And for a limited time, if you go to onnit.com/Luke, you can receive a 14-count bottle of Alpha Brain to try for free. That's it. Just pay for shipping. So go to onnit.com/Luke and check it out. This episode of the Lifestylist Podcast, along with many others, is brought to you by my friends over at Organifi. And today, the product I'd like to talk about is Organifi Gold, and it gets a serious gold medal. The purpose of this particular product is to soothe you and to help you recover and relax. So I typically do this one at night in a hot drink, which I'll tell you about, although you can do it on ice during the daytime. It's kind of an all-in-one deal. But the core ingredient of the gold is turmeric, and it's an anti-inflammatory spice that's one of my favorites. I use it all the time. It's got actually over 8,000 published studies and articles showing its numerous health benefits. So I'll make myself a nice fatty little golden latte to wind the night down. It's also a way that I cheat and trick my friends into thinking I'm a really good chef because I make this amazing drink. But literally all there is hot water and Organifi Gold and some ghee or coconut oil, and it tastes amazing because it's got coconut milk and cinnamon and ginger and lemon balm and a couple medicinal mushrooms. So it's a really warm, relaxing beverage, and it's clinically proven to reduce stress. So that's what I like to do at night. That's Organifi Gold, and you can mix it into all kinds of drinks and smoothies and make ice cream out of it and everything. It's just totally badass, and more than anything, I mean, it's good for you and all that, of course, but it's just super, super delicious. I love this stuff. I live on it. Okay, so go to Organifi.com/Luke. That's Organifi with an I, Organifi.com/Luke. And if you use the code Lifestylist, you'll save 20% off on your little bucket of gold. That's Organifi.com/Luke, 20% off with Lifestylist. What's cracking, people? What's poppin'? Luke Story, host of this here podcast known as The Lifestylist. We're going to be building the ultimate lifestyle today with my friend Kyle Kingsbury from Onnit. It's going to be epic. Before we jump into that, I want to let you know about a special bootleg broadcast that comes out this Friday, live in Malibu with Eli Block, where we're going to be talking about orgasm as a spiritual discipline. Yep, you got that. Not one for the kids, though, folks. That's this Friday with Eli Block. And then next Tuesday on our regular release, we've got Tech Dream or EMF Nightmare, how your cell phone and Wi-Fi are trying to kill you and how to stop it with Brian Hoyer. That is a show you don't want to miss. To make sure you don't miss Friday's bonus show or next Tuesday's regular show, just click subscribe on your podcast app and the damn things are going to get downloaded to you every week automatically. You do nothing except click play and listen for your enjoyment and enlightenment. I've got a few upcoming speaking engagements. August 22nd, I'll be at Next Health in Century City. August 23rd, the following night, I'll be at Osteo Strong in West LA. Then one of my favorite events of all time, Mercado Sagrado, October 13th and 14th, where I'll be doing something real special. And then I'll be at Whitma Live again in New York City on October 25th. To get access to any of the events in which I'm participating, simply go to lukestory.com/events. Okay, on to today's show. Check it out. So Kyle Kingsbury is the director of human optimization over at Onnit out in Austin, Texas, where I recently spent a couple days when I was out there for Paleo FX. And he had me as a guest on his show. I was on the Aubrey Marcus show. Then I had Kyle on mine. It was a damn party over there at the Onnit headquarters. Really amazing experience all around. And Kyle's just a fantastic guy. I mean, if you look at this guy, it looks like he could rip your head off with his bare hands, but he's truly the epitome of a gentle giant. Just a really cool, conscious guy. And, you know, something I was just thinking of as I recorded this intro was on the day that he and I recorded, I had a flight out of Austin back to LAX, and we recorded so long because there was all this stuff going on. And the Onnit headquarters is really like a vortex. Once you step through that door, you just have no idea what's going to happen. So as a result, I was going to miss my flight, and I was about to jump in an Uber, and Kyle's like, dude, I know Austin. You're never going to make it. Let me just drive you. And homie drove me to the airport. I don't even drive my best damn friends to the airport. And that's when I knew Kyle was a special man. So this is a really great episode. So what we're going to talk about with Kyle is how he used fighting and violence as a coping mechanism as a kid, the difference between useful and dangerous drugs, learning to quiet the mental noise without the use of drugs, what it's like to struggle with suicidal thoughts as early as 7 years old, the respectful camaraderie between professional fighters, the realization that saved Kyle from jumping to his death in a suicidal episode, the boxing coach that brought Kyle to traditional sweat lodges before and after every fight camp, discovering the world of plant medicines, psilocybin, ayahuasca, and many more, how diet, supplementation, nootropics, and even microdosing play a role in total human optimization at Onnit, why Kyle had to be a bouncer and a bartender at a strip club almost the entire time he was fighting in the UFC, a day in the life of Kyle Kingsbury, breathwork, cold thermogenesis, killer workouts, and more. The transformative plant medicine experiences that Kyle's gone through with his wife and the insane sex they had as a result of using various substances, teaching your kids the right and wrong way to use plant medicines and other parenting insights. So Kyle, former UFC fighter, current chief over at the Human Optimization Department at Onnit, and just a really great guy. I'm so excited to bring this episode to you. Before we jump into that, I want to remind you to go to lukestory.com/store, where you can find all of my hand-picked favorite supplements and biohacking technology, including, of course, my very favorite products from Onnit. So it's a great way to support the show, our sponsors, and you can get yourself tons of sweet discounts on almost every item in the store. So again, go to lukestory.com/store. And now I present to you, in all his conscious warrior glory, Mr. Kyle Kingsbury. Enjoy the show. Kyle, welcome to the Lifestyles Podcast, dude.
Fuck yeah, thanks for having me, brother.
It's funny doing two back-to-back shows, like so close without even going outside and kind of rebooting. I'm like, wait, who's interviewing who? So those of you listening, Kyle Kingsbury here just interviewed me for the Onnit podcast. So I don't know which one's going to come out first, but we just did an hour deep dive into some crazy ass shit.
It's going to take a little minute.
Good, yeah, mine too.
Yeah, we're going to probably be, I'm looking at July.
Yeah, mine could be even longer. I know. Isn't that crazy when you have a podcast though? It's like there's such an abundance of fascinating people to interview. that I never want to pass one up. Like, I don't need any interviews right now, but there were two really dope people I ran into at Paleo FX, and I'm just like,
that's what I like though.
I'm like, fuck, I got to do it. I
like
can't
when
miss
you're-
this.
Yeah, if your back's against the wall, it sucks, but once you're ahead of the curve, then it's just like, hey man, there's these fucking awesome people to podcast with, and sorry your podcast won't air for 3 months, but that's the name of the game. Get in that spot.
I've had a couple, we were talking about Max Lugavere, and he came over and did my show. And I don't think I realized he had a book launch happening. And so he texted me, he's like, hey, my book comes out. Is the show out this week? And I was like, shit, did I tell him it was coming out this week? I don't even know when they're coming out. And then luckily he hit the New York Times bestseller list anyway, without my little podcast helping. But yeah, it is a little weird when you sit on one for a while. And, I think people are probably like, is he ever going to put it out? But, you got to sequence. To me, I sequence the shows according to sort of the message. So if I do one on fitness, I'm not going to do two of those in a row.
Yeah, I've never run back-to-back fighters.
Exactly.
MMA guys on 2 weeks in a row. That's fucking...
Exactly.
That's all bad.
So why I'm excited to talk to you is you're a little bit, now that I got to know you in our other interview, we're totally on the same page with a zillion things, but you are a little bit unique because I haven't interviewed definitely no one that is like warrior energy that's been an MMA fighter and has done some of the crazy shit that you've done to other people and to yourself, which has always been fascinating to me because I've been in 2 fights my whole life. And I was like, I think one I was probably 7 years old and the other one 12. Both times I got a couple of hits in and then they got me on the ground and I was like, uncle, and my kids I sold weed to pulled him off of me and that was the end of the fight. So we'll get into some of that. But, I've been studying up on you and listening to your show and stuff like that. And we have so much in common in our past. In a sense, we've manifested, our adult lives a little bit differently in many ways. But something I really identified with you was some of the shit that you felt in childhood. And so I want to take you back in a time machine a little bit and give us a little bit of context of your journey and some of that discomfort you felt early on, some of the trauma as you experienced it that led you to be this fucking beacon of health and personal development and consciousness exploration, fitness exploration. You're a really well-rounded dude, but I know a little bit about you now and that pain is what kind of motivated you in the beginning.
Yeah, I think, it's even in health and wellness. I don't like to label shit, obviously as you do the work, you're like, oh, that fucking puts you in a box. That's no good.
Right.
And all these guys that I look up to in that field, like Rob Wolf and Mark Sisson and many others, the same goes for them. They're more than their fucking work. They're more than the books they write, But I think pain's the catalyst for all of them. Rob Wolf talked about being a raw vegan for a couple of years in college.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, man. And that was the catalyst. His health went in the shitter, and that's when he really started diving in and became an apprentice under Lauren Cordain and started figuring out paleo. And now he's known as a paleo guy, but he's still, he'll eat fucking corn tortilla tacos and shit like that, and he's not too dogmatic about his approach. And I appreciate that. But
that's good because I ate those last night here in Austin. Exactly that thing.
Pain is, we have fucking, good cheeses from Southern European cows. I'm not diehard paleo and I'm only keto part of the year. I think those are good practices. Fasting, we can dive into that too, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, pain most definitely was a catalyst. And it's funny how it came to where I am now because, you talk about the arc of the hero's journey and you certainly have a fucking big arc, but it's this idea, just to paint the picture. And I said this on the solo podcast on the On It show. Everyone goes through shit, and that is my disclaimer. It's not a woe is me story. It's not I had it worse than anyone else. Everyone goes through shit. And the thing is, I think the thing that fucked me up the most was seeing my parents fight constantly.
Physically or verbal?
Almost always verbally. They would throw shit. So there was some physical stuff, but then, my dad never beat us or beat my mom or anything like that. Cops were called a number of times, things like that. But it's that level of discord and, screaming in each other's faces and screaming in my face. And I fought a lot growing up. That was a release for me. You listen to guys like Steven Kotler and Jamie Wheel talk about flow states.
Yeah.
That's the fucking flow state. I wasn't thinking about anything going on at home. And there was a part of me that because of this stuff I was going through, I really enjoyed fucking people up. And I didn't care if I got punched in the face because I felt alive. I felt in the moment and present, and I didn't have any other worries. It was just, I'm in survival mode and it feels really good to be here.
That's funny. I can kind of connect to that. Although, as I said, I don't have that same experience, but I'm feeling you out right there. And it's like, I'm seeing you in those fights, not only releasing some of the pain that you were accumulating and pushing it out, pressing out that pain, but I can see you in that flow state, in that presence. Like, I can imagine when someone's trying to fucking kill you, that you have to be present. Like, all your problems and the shit going on at home disappears because you're like, ha, I'm in with this guy. It's after school or whatever, on the fucking field or wherever fights happen when you're younger,
Yeah, and it wasn't, and that's the thing, like Bruce Lee would say, don't fight angry, be present. It narrows your vision, right?
Right.
And that's something you really, all the best fighters in professional fighting embody that, but there is an emotional aspect to it. And I think in those fights when I was a kid, I never fought angry. There was just this like, oh yes, we're going to do this, like fear for certain. But the second the first punch is thrown, it's just, fuck yeah, we're in it, and then it's just no thought, just pure silence, pure movement, pure embodiment of 100% presence and aggression. Like I'm going to it's an outlet. It's the greatest outlet. And it was a beautiful outlet for me. But that was, it's funny when I look back and kind of unpack that, the motivation behind that, and really seeing, and even when I first started fighting professionally, that was still there. I very much wanted to fucking destroy people. It wasn't about being the best version of myself, which, when I retired, that was what it had become.
Right.
But certainly when I first got into it was like, I want to fuck people up,
Was there, I'm going to have to be non-linear here because I got the clock here and I got to catch a plane. I'm like, I'm going to fuck with your story right now.
All around, brother.
Well, there's too many interesting things in there. When you're fighting like that, is there camaraderie between the fighters? Is there
on the professional level?
Yeah. Okay. I'm not talking about school scuffles and shit.
Most guys that make it to that level, they respect the game. They know that everyone's trying to fuck. Only one guy can hold the belt. You know what I'm saying? Sure. Everyone's working towards the same shit.
Yeah.
There's quite a few guys that I become really close with, even guys that I've lost to. After fights.
But when you're in the ring, you're still like, I'm going to kill this motherfucker.
Yeah.
For the sport of it.
Yeah, for the sport. And because we've both signed the documents, a contract to do this thing, and when the cage door shuts, all that shit's out the window. Whatever was said before, whatever the predictions are, whatever the media's talking about, that has nothing to do with it. It's your asses on the line. And the only way out is to fucking successfully defend yourself and to win, right? Or get the shit beat out of you, which I've been the nail just as many times I've been the hammer or close to it.
Yeah. It's just funny. I can't wait to get into more of that. But let's get back to your story. So that was your first kind of expression or coping mechanism. And then, as I recall, you also started getting into some drugs and drinking and partying a bit as an escape as well.
Yeah, football was a big outlet for me prior to that, and my parents, I don't know if it was a good job, but they would always tell me, don't do drugs. It'll ruin your testosterone. It'll ruin your performance. And that was a great play for my dad.
True? Yeah. I wonder if that's actually true.
Well, I think alcohol is going to fuck with a lot of stuff, and certainly with sleep. That's a given. There's science.
It's smart of your dad, though, if he's like, all right, what's his passion? And let me tell him the drugs are going to fuck with his passion.
Yeah, it was a great angle. Angle. And those are the wrong drugs. I'm an advocate for the right drugs.
Yeah.
As the McKenna brothers have said, we're walking bags of chemicals. Fucking, you could argue nootropics are drugs. Caffeine is a drug. Nicotine is a drug,
I'm with you too. As someone that, doesn't at this point choose to like recreationally do drugs. But I mean, the coca plant, the morphine poppy, they have a place in our human evolution.
Yeah.
And they have uses. Like if I fucking get hit by a car walking out of here today, knock on wood, you better give my ass some morphine,
Yeah.
But I'm not going to go to find the ghetto in Austin and go buy it and try to put it in myself because I have emotional pain I'm trying to mask, So I like that perspective.
There is a right way and a wrong way to do anything, But it's taken a long time to figure that out.
There are the drugs too that elevate your consciousness, and then there are the ones that if you touch them enough, they're going to bring your ass way down.
Yeah. So alcohol ultimately is that. It's the anti-psychedelic. It's numbing. It takes you down a notch. And a lot of people think it's freeing. I'm my best self. I'm this, I'm that. But what you're doing is you're essentially quieting the noise. And there's other ways to do that are less detrimental.
Yeah.
And I still drink on occasion, but nowhere near the way that I used to drink when, and it's funny because I could never see I have I almost slipped up. We would have needed some editing. I have close family members that have gone through AA and the 12 steps. And that does resonate with me. I've been in many meetings, and in those things, there's a lot of commonalities with that, but it's this general idea of, they have ideas like, you're going to drink to cover things. You're going to drink when you're in pain. You're going to drink that way. And I never saw that in myself. I saw, I'm drinking to party. I'm drinking to have a good time. Yeah. But I just kept pouring fucking gasoline on the fire. There was no limit. I have memories of, flashbacks of being like 13 years old, 14 years old, in my fucking chonies, hanging out over my mom's balcony in the backyard, just projectile vomiting everywhere.
I remember those days.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and it's funny to look back on that because it never, even in college, was a thing where I'm drinking because I'm in pain. I'm just drinking to have a good time, and I saw the relationship that I had with alcohol and with any drug for that matter was to escape. It was because I was not comfortable in my own skin. Truly.
Yeah. And then what about the other stuff that you've talked about? And one thing I think is really cool about you, and I'd love for people to go back and listen to that episode, the solo show you did on the On It podcast. It was in December 2017. And you break down and start getting choked up in that episode. And I've done that a bunch of times on my podcast. And there's the ego side of me is embarrassed as shit. I feel like such a fucking wuss for doing that. But I'm also pretty out there, woo-woo hippie kind of trippy fucking guy. So it's not that unexpected. I really respected the fact that you were able to connect like that because you're a big dude. You're a fitness guy, former MMA guy. I wouldn't look at you and be like, oh, there's a guy who's in touch with his feelings and can access his trauma and use feminine energy and shit. Just no. But I like that you were able to access that and be that authentic and vulnerable, man. And I just want to commend you for being that real because as a man, even though I wasn't your archetypical tough guy, I was a musician and creative and more artistic and stuff like that. It was never safe to talk about shit like we're talking about now. It's so cool and healthy that men like us from all walks of life, and I'm a little bit older than you by 10 years or so, are able to really, I think, inspire this next generation of men by going there and talking about some of this stuff. So what I'd like to hear about from you that I so related to was not only the escapism that you use through violence and drugs and alcohol, but the suicidal ideation and the point that you got to where it almost became more than an idea.
Yeah. So probably, for certain, I recall having thoughts of how I was going to kill myself, planning suicide at 7 years old. Maybe it started at 6, but definitely by 7. And I remember, thinking of which rifle I could use out of my dad's closet, but the fact that my fingers wouldn't reach far enough to get the gun pointed at my head. All sorts of shit.
You can use a stick for that, by the way. Yeah, you're not to be morbid. I'm glad you didn't figure that out, but just saying.
Probably a toe could have worked,
That's really fucked up. I'm sorry. But we're on the other side of it.
Yeah, brother, we're on the other side, man. Yeah. It's the water under the bridge. And I remember asking my dad, what would happen if I jumped off of our patio onto the ground head first, if I swan dove? And it was only a second story. And he's like, well, you wouldn't die. You'd probably break, your neck and a lot of vertebrae, and you'd be fucked up. You might be paralyzed. You might have all this shit. And I was nodding my head and listening, but I had already heard the answer I wanted to hear. I wouldn't die, right? So I knew that one was out. But this was the shit. When I asked him that question, I don't think he had any idea that's what I was trying to get to, And I started, therapy at a young age, and I thought it was beneficial in a certain sense, when it came to why is he fucking up in school? Why can't he learn? It's no, he's, I was told I was very intelligent and I just didn't like the work and things like that. And clearly now I can see that was the case. But suicidal thoughts came and went, and I tried to run away with my sister, didn't make it far. My parents followed us. They were like, okay, you guys can run away, and we're not coming home. And then they're 100 yards behind us the whole time on our walk. And then we're like, fuck, where are we going to sleep? All right, let's turn back.
Yeah, you have your $5 allowance in your pocket.
$2 a week. Yeah. $2 a week.
Cool, we can get a Happy Meal. And then by around 8 o'clock, we're going to be starving and cold.
Yeah. And so, I think in college, that's where I started getting into pills. And, I had a doctor that would give me anything, Valium, Vicodin, Xanax.
Sweet.
And so when you have anxiety because you can't sit in your own skin comfortably. It's a great way to mask that. It's a phenomenal way. But when you stop taking those things, that fucking rebound is real. Like if you've been chemically altering your anxiety for a period of time and you decide, hey, I feel good, I'm not going to take it, that anxiety is right in your fucking face because you've solved nothing. You have unpacked none of the trauma. It's still right fucking there.
So well said.
Just underneath the surface, you know?
And also when you're being an armchair, like administrating doctor will do things like take cocaine and crystal meth to treat anxiety. Bad idea. We'll take alcohol to treat depression. It's a fucking depressant.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So,
yeah. And then the doctor is not even considering Coke and alcohol as a part of the equation, right? It's like Valium was great to come down from Coke, you know, and Xanax was great when the Coke was really strong, you know, those kind of things. So it's like you're doing this fucking roller coaster with your neurochemistry and no telling how it's bogging down the liver and the kidneys and all that, and still escaping the pain, not addressing it, you know. And when football ended in college, I sat the bench, you know, my junior senior year at ASU, and it left a chip on my shoulder, which kind of fueled the fighting. But
when you say you're on the bench, they're not putting you in the games?
Yeah, I would get in for like 2 or 3 plays. And it fucking drove me crazy. And then that's not because I was the best guy. It's because I just wanted to fucking play.
Yeah.
I had been the best guy until I got to ASU. You know, and I'm not, the guys that started, some of them didn't even go pro, but they definitely were better than I was looking back on it.
Right.
But when it ended, that's all I knew was being an athlete my entire life. And I lost that camaraderie. I lost a reason to want to do shit. I knew I didn't want a desk job, which I have now. I didn't want to sit in a fucking cubicle. I didn't want to do sales or any of the shit that my parents did. And having lost all that, and then finally all this shit's in my face again, you know, the childhood stuff, everything that's going on that I'd never addressed, I went really into probably the deepest depression that I'd ever had. And with, you know, the fucking gauntlet of chemicals that I'm putting into my body, a lot of them pharmaceutical that have been prescribed, like it just was a fucking recipe for rock bottom, you know. And some shit had happened in a relationship that I was in early on where I just realized, like, I thought no one will ever love me.
Yeah. I know that feeling, bro.
Man. I don't even think I brought that up on the solo cast, but there it is. Still there.
Yeah.
And that was so hard and difficult that it was like, all right, fuck it. I've got whatever pills I got left in the container, they're going down the hatch. And I knew that probably wasn't enough. I had 60 pills of fucking the 2 milligrams antibars, like really ridiculous strength shit. But I only had maybe 10 or 12 left. And I only had 10 or 20 left Vicodin, or Valium. So I tossed it all down the hatch and I drove to the top of parking lot 7 at ASU to jump off, stripped down naked. And the security guard saw me going up there in the middle of the night. And he was like, what the fuck's this drunk guy doing? You know, I probably was driving like a madman. And right as that stuff kicking in, it might have worked in some way to calm the anxiety. But that was the first time where I really felt I'm not alone. Like, I don't have to do this alone. Like, there was some sense of there's more in life. There, whatever consciousness is, whatever guiding light, God, whatever great spirit there is, I felt loved, you know? And this guy fucking caught up to me and he was like, hey, you're naked. What are you doing? Can you come down right now? And I was like, yeah, man, I'll come down. And kind of woke up in a hospital a day or two later. Snap, didn't remember anything. You know, my parents had flown out and my sister, and they're like, why are the fucking nurses such assholes here? And they're like, you were not nice to them. I was like, okay, all right, that makes sense. But you know, and I've you know, yeah, I had to let go of that. But I spent some time in what my mom calls the loony bin. I think it was like a transitionary place for people to detox and whatnot. And in that, it was funny because everyone there had their own issues. And they're looking at me like, you're fucking a 240-pound good-looking football player that goes to college and your family's here. Like, what the fuck do you have that's going wrong? Like, seriously, like, take a look in the mirror. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with that. It really doesn't. it had everything to do with me not doing the work and me not being comfortable in the world, and that having that break, it was necessary. It was a huge component, and then of course they wanted to put me on SSRIs and all the neurochemistry shit. And hey, you got bipolar disorder. And lithium was the first, mental drug that I took where I realized I'm not going to take any of this stuff because it turned me into a fucking mute. I didn't feel highs or lows. I just felt nothing. And I felt like a zombie floating through space. Yeah. And that might have been dose dependent or not. But the point is, like, I realized right there, like, whatever needs to be done internally. I'm not going to fix it with a pill. And that was a huge catalyst for me. And then not long after that, I got into fighting, and there was my outlet. I hadn't done the work per se, but I had a new outlet. I had a team. I had something that was bigger than me that I could work towards. And I was really good at it. My first 2 fights, I won in under 30 seconds. So it was like there was a fucking draw, like, hey, I can be really good at something. And the goal of making it in the UFC, I'd watched, since I was a kid. And along the way, I had a boxing coach who was part Native American who would take me for traditional sweat lodges before and after every fight camp.
Oh, no way.
And we'd do the Timmins call, and before the fight camp, it would be to zero in and set an intention on what we want to accomplish, and afterwards to heal and have reflection and to let go,
Wow. That's a cool part of the warrior experience there. I've done one sweat lodge. It was fantastic.
It is. It's incredible. Even just the sweet. But at one point, I asked him, like, hey, man, when are we going to do La Medicina? And he started laughing and just said, hey, I've been waiting for you to ask.
Oh,
so we dropped in with psilocybin, many times, and
psilocybin in a sweat lodge.
Yeah, right before you go in. So I mean, you're in the sweat, and by round 4, you're fucking balls deep.
You're tripping on mushrooms in the sweat lodge.
Yep,
that's so hardcore.
It is. It is a wonderful combination of powerful means in either direction.
I can't imagine that, because I had been doing saunas since I was a little kid, actually, in hot springs. I'm used to hot and cold temperatures. I got that early on, that it's good for you and all that. But in the sweat lodge I was with a bunch of people. I didn't think they were like that badass. And I mean, I almost couldn't hang. They're like, try not to leave. And I'm just like, oh my God, are you guys fucking kidding me? Like, how long is this? And I'm sitting there, I'm like crammed in against the fucking edge of the little tent thing. And it was brutal. I can't imagine.
Every time I hit it with the water, it just goes up to the top, which is right at your forehead level.
Yeah, it was super intense. So I can't imagine doing that, tripping balls too.
Yeah, those are powerful experiences. And that's really, I had never, like yourself, I had done shit inappropriately many times without an intention, just let me escape.
Yeah, taking acid at the kegger.
Yeah, and that was the first time where I had an experience using plants in a constructive way to reveal what's going on inside. And so much weight had been lifted, and so many things could be worked through in that setting, in that context, and using them appropriately, that it just turned me on to all of that. And I found so much power in those things. Ayahuasca taught me to meditate and do yoga. Like, it was my message 3 ceremonies in a row. And by the 3rd ceremony, I was like, why the fuck do you keep telling me this? And the answer was, because you haven't started a daily practice of yoga or meditation. Like, you're not moving. You're not going to graduate to the new information until you start to master this.
As you started getting into the plant medicines and exploring your consciousness, meditating, yoga, all that, you're still fighting? You're still in the MMA and all that?
Yeah. I had done psilocybin, probably started around 2010, ayahuasca in 2012. And ayahuasca is, it's in a league of its own. And
how did you even find out about that shit coming from like the world that you did? Was it through the sweat lodge fight coach guy?
Yeah, and he passed away, but he really planted the seed for all of that. And yeah, man, it's like there's so much with that I wouldn't have been exposed to in that way without him. So I have a huge debt of gratitude for him. Lots of love for him because he showed me that way. It's been a wild ride. I had a shoulder injury actually when I started ayahuasca. So there was time to take off from fighting and really dive deep into the subconscious and see what's going on the inside. And I only fought one time after that. By the time my shoulder had healed, I was training again. I wasn't sure I was going to fight again, with the amount of money or lack of that fighters make and having a second job and living in my mom's garage. It started to not make sense anymore.
Right.
And taking health into consideration. If my face is getting hit hard enough to break, literally break, that's going to take its toll long term.
Is that what happens? You can get all the bones broken up in your face and shit?
Yeah, I've had my left eyebrow and orbital bone fractured twice. I've had my jaw busted in 2 places. Like fighting a light heavyweight, that's Chuck Liddell and Shogun Rua and John Jones. That's all that. I've never fought those guys, but that's the fucking division. You're about as big as a heavyweight at a fight camp, then you cut down to 205 with all that power and speed. Yeah, it took its toll.
That shit's crazy, dude. It's so interesting to just talk to someone who's explored that part of their humanity in this journey, because as I said, for me, I always try to put myself in people's shoes, like, oh, what would that be like to have that experience? It's like, dude, I can't think of many things that I would dislike more than hopping in a fucking ring and having some huge guy hit me in the face, even once, let alone multiple times for like a few minutes, one blow. I'm like, yeah, I'm career over. I'm out. Bad idea. It's so interesting to have gone on that journey. But as you started to work with consciousness a bit and you start doing the math of, this isn't really adding up. I'm not, not going to be buying a house on this salary anytime soon and shit. You started to kind of fade out of, the dream of doing that professionally ongoing.
Yeah. And it was less important, with doing the work with ayahuasca and things like that. Like it just wasn't the most important thing in my life anymore. And it really has to be successful at that.
Right.
But all along the way, I had been, fighting taught me to dive deep into health and wellness and nutrition, mobility, all the things that would help me in the fight game. It was a reason to learn more. And I've read more in fighting than I ever did in college or prior. So I had a lot of knowledge there. And then after retiring, diving into cognitive optimization, like what are the things I can do to help me heal the damage that I've done? And
did you ever get a concussion?
Oh, fuck.
You're like, concussion?
Yeah. Many, many.
No shit.
Many signs of concussion. I talked about that on a Rogan Experience when I fought Glover Teixeira. He hit me so hard in the temple twice with left hooks. That's the only fight where I forgot where the locker room was. So when I was leaving the cage, my coach had dipped out and I wandered through the halls aimlessly, making small talk with anyone I bumped into because I didn't want to say, I don't know where the locker room is, because that would result in a longer suspension. They would say, hey, your head got fucked up. You got to take 8 months off or 6 months off instead of being able to fight again in 2 months. So I didn't tell anybody, and I just wandered around talking to people like, yeah, it was a shitty fight, got my ass beat. I was like, it's a fucked up deal, and I didn't sleep well for 3 days. Definitely battled depression from that, which is a clear-cut sign of concussion and TBI. So but these things were the catalysts for me to learn about this stuff, to learn about how diet affects the brain, which supplements work, which nootropics work. How do we play with this stuff? How can I play with microdosing to help influence change? And the beautiful thing that as science catches up to this stuff that's a little bit more out there, from breath work and cold therapy biohacks to things like plant medicines, like DMT is incredibly healing for the brain. And in the vine,
is it really?
Yeah, man, in the vine, Banisteriopsis caapi, which is one of the components, one of the biggest components of ayahuasca, they've found 2 alkaloids, harmine and harmaline, that actually help create new neurons. So you're essentially, it's like one of the greatest concoctions you can have for the brain. And it's found it to be incredibly healing.
Have you ever done any, like brain scans or anything like that before, earlier in life versus now, after having done a lot of these interventions and stuff?
They do it now for fighters with the Cleveland Clinic out in Vegas, which is kind of the home base of the UFC. And I've talked to a few guys that have participated in that. I feel, look, I would be curious to look at it now, to see like what has changed. Like, I obviously have nothing to compare it to, but what my brain looks like now, having done all these interventions. But the truth is, like we were talking about on the On It podcast, when you feel it, you understand that it's working, and my memory recall works better than it ever did when I was a fucking kid right now.
Right.
Like I even thought, like, once I went into ketosis, the way I was able to remember and recall things from books and the things I was reading and just fucking throw out numbers and understand and grasp the concept, I considered going back to school just because of that. And then realized, like, no, I think this stuff can be learned outside of school.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny as you get older and your passions change. So you started losing the passion for fighting. You're like, what's the point? There's more to life than this. And you're going another direction. It's interesting how you can actually get a thirst for education. I've had that same thought. I'm like, I should go to business school. I have 2 businesses. I don't know anything about fucking business other than just trial and error. But when I was a kid, if you're like, hey, you should go to business school, I'd be like, I'm playing in a band, dummy. Go to business school? I'm way too cool for that. So you've been self-educating ever since that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what happened after you, like, what'd you do for work and shit like that when you were like, I'm not going to fight? I mean,
I worked the entire time I was in the UFC.
Okay.
I made 20 grand a fight if I won, 10 grand if I lost.
Okay.
On average.
Okay.
So then you pay 10% to coaches, 10% to management. Then you pay the IRS off of your fucking 16 grand.
Because I'm like, that doesn't sound that bad. Shit, I might take a hit actually for 10 grand.
10 grand? No, fuck that, dude. 100 grand maybe, not 10. I mean,
I think about the shit I have to do to make 10 grand. It's a lot of work.
There's stuff.
But I don't get bloodied or get broken, eyebrows either.
It's long-term stuff that you consider, You have to.
But what's a UFC fighter, that's winning, top of his game, one of the, top 10 famous guys? What are they getting to fight?
Well, Conor McGregor's making 7 figures, but he's kind of in a league of his own.
Right.
There's other guys that make around 300 grand a fight, that kind of thing. And those are champions,
Yeah.
So the pay scale in fighting is just atrocious. Like the NFL in 2007 went on strike, the players union did, because they wanted 55% of the total revenue. And they won and got it. It's understood now that fighters from any given fight card, even when Conor gets 7 figures, the total revenue split for fighters as a whole is under 15%.
Oh, wow.
85% of the owners.
Damn.
So it's a fucking different game.
That's pretty rigged.
For work, I was bouncing and bartending at a titty bar the entire time I was in the UFC.
Wow.
It was only like a 6-month stretch where I could train full time because of 2 fight of the night bonuses. The second I lost again, I was right back to working the grind until 3:30 a.m.
Wow. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Today's show is brought to you by Four Sigmatic. Now, you guys know I'm always talking about their medicinal mushroom elixirs because I take them all the time. I'm super addicted to them. But now they've got a couple other products that I'm really into. They've got a decaf coffee for when I don't feel like freaking out on caffeine. And then they have a regular coffee, but not just coffee. Both of them are infused with medicinal mushrooms. So it's a mushroom coffee. They're fantastic. They've also got some matcha drinks like the matcha with lion's mane. And the thing that's cool about the Four Sigmatic drinks is they're totally organic. They're super powerful. Herbs and superfoods and mushrooms, but they're really easy to use. That's the issue I've had, like trying to be healthy and making myself some cool drinks, is that it's kind of a pain in the ass and I have to open up all these different containers and it's a big project. Their products come in these little packets. You just pop them open. They're very portable. I take them on the plane. I take them on trips. I keep them in my bag, in my car. I kind of have them all over the house. And I can just use them whenever I want. So Four Sigmatic, one of my favorite companies. If you want to check them out, I highly recommend that you do. To do that, you go to foursigmatic.com. And like all of my sponsors, they offer a sweet discount to the listeners. If you use the code LukeStory, you will save 15% off your order, which is a pretty good deal. So go to foursigmatic.com, enter the code LukeStory, and save 15%. Check it out. And now, back to the interview. At what point did you start to move into, you're exploring health and wellness, as we call it, and, you're becoming a psychonaut and all this shit. But at what point did you start to do this kind of work professionally?
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. I went on Joe Rogan's show, and I know he tells this to fucking probably half the people he has on, but he's like, dude, you need to start a podcast.
Oh, no way.
And I was like, yeah, I've considered it, but not really certain about it. And he's like, dude, it's easy. Young Jamie will help you get set up if you don't know the technical shit. And really wanted to do that. And, that was kind of the push, and had a company come along that wanted to sponsor the podcast so I could do it full time. And so started doing that just last year. Had my own podcast, and it was doing, well for a brand new podcast, not taken off or anything like that. And came out to PaleoFX, met Aubrey. We shared the same flight home because they're open the next On It gym in Vegas. I was living in Vegas. And we hit it off. We talked plant medicines, diet, health, and wellness, just all the things.
Yeah, you guys are like kindred spirits for sure.
That's my brother. Yeah,
that's
for sure.
Funny.
And I knew who Aubrey. I'd followed Aubrey for years on the Rogan show, and already was balls deep with Alpha Brain and a lot of the On It products.
Right.
So he offered me a job. I was like, well, I kind of got a good thing here in Vegas. We got family. And as chance would have it, I was flying out for an interview, and in the airport, that company let me go without severance. So It was like, oh shit, all right. And I fucking meditated the entire flight, getting in just to fucking be calm and present. And I actually felt better when I got off the flight than when I did before the flight. Like, but with hearing the news, not figuring out like, where are we going to fucking live? What are we going to do? And it was awesome. Got hired here, and it's been a pretty fast change of pace. We moved twice last year, a lot of stressors, but Austin's a fucking beautiful place. And, at first I thought I'd just be taking over the On It podcast, and really I do so much more here that it's really fulfilling. And there's a lot of novelty here. It keeps shit fresh. And for having a desk, and a cubicle, it's a pretty fucking cool place. We get the infrared sauna, dual and hot rock we can use on the clock. Everyone here is encouraged to work out and to move. A lot of times you'll see me outside grounding with my shirt off, doing Tai Chi in the fucking grass, and just experience. I look like a fucking weirdo. I'm kind of the company guinea pig. But it's beautiful to have that freedom. I'm rarely at my desk unless I actually have to bang out some emails or do some work. But for the most part, I get to experience what it means to be, living the life of total human optimization.
On the way over here from my Airbnb to the On It HQ, the Uber driver and I were having a chat. They're very chatty here, which I'm not normally a fan of. And I've had this discipline where I have to tell Uber drivers like, hey, like, no offense, you seem like a great person, but I really just like some quiet time. And I'm like such a people pleaser. It's actually hard for me to do that, but I've learned. This girl started talking. I was about to be like, yeah, I already told her to turn the radio off. She's bumping some fucking techno when I got in. I'm like, not having it. She starts talking. I'm like, how annoying is this going to be? And then I thought, I could A, be a nice person and be friendly to her. B, it'll get me in a good talkative state because I'm about to go record 2 podcasts. So she didn't know she was being used as a flow state and, instigator. But what she said, she was like, I love driving Uber because I don't like having a job. And I said, you know what? I hate having a job too. I don't even have a job. I have companies, but I don't have a job. And then when I came in here on that thought, that's the last thing we talked about was how much jobs suck. And I walk in here, I'm looking at you guys. I'm like, dude, I was going to work anywhere. This would be the spot. Meditation room, gym, sauna, every kind of smoothie and superfood you could ever want, good lighting, ACs bumping, you got PMF, you got a massage table. I'm like, if you're going to have a job, this is the place to have a job. So just shout out to On It. If you guys are hiring any of my listeners, I would definitely be on their human resources tip. And like, if you're going to work anywhere, this is probably the best place in the world. So let's get into some of the other practices that you're into. I want to know about, the kind of breath work you're into, the cold plunges, all the kind of stuff that you're doing on the physical level.
Yeah.
And also what your workouts look like now, not training to go kick someone's ass, but working more on whatever you're working on bodily.
Yeah, those are much different. I experiment with a lot of things and keep what sticks, right? And certainly, listen to Wim Hof on Ferris and Rogan's made a lot of sense to me. I started hitting the breath work right in the car while I was listening. And then, all right, no breath holds. I'm fucking getting lightheaded.
Don't do what I did this morning to pass out in the car for sure.
It works. It really does work. And I probably spent thousands of dollars on ice over the years. We had a horse trough that I got off Amazon. And you're looking at $60 to $80 every time you want to do an ice bath. That shit adds up quick. But Kelly Starrett, Matt Vincent were telling me, like, buy a chest freezer.
That's what I did.
Yeah, dude. It's the best thing. I wanted to ask you about that because I heard you're using like hydrogen drops and all sorts of cool little add-ins.
Yeah.
All I've been doing is Epsom salt and Dead Sea salt. But I want to mitigate growth of fungus, bacteria, and mold, whatever the fuck's going to grow in that thing.
Yeah.
We shower before we get in. But, anything that can make the water last longer is also savings,
Yeah.
So,
do you want to know the download real quick?
Yes, I want the download.
I put together this protocol for Ben Greenfield because he got wind of my setup. And then, I don't know, I started making the email and it ended up being longer than just like, oh yeah, buy the thing at Sears. I was like, God damn it, I can't do anything half-assed. So I made this whole protocol with Amazon links and all this. And I think he's making a blog post about it.
He is. This week comes out Tuesday.
Oh, okay, cool.
BenGreenfieldFitness.com.
Cool. So I'll give Ben a shout out and you can find this protocol there. And, of course, I borrowed bits and pieces of it from other people. But first thing I did is I bought the Sears freezer, and you want at least 17 cubic feet, probably more for a guy your size. I mean, maybe,
I got 22. I can
yeah, 22 is good. And then if you really wanted to, you could squeeze another person in there and you could sit feet to feet in there, you know, not that comfortably, but you could do it. But what I realized when I first got is I'd fill it up with water and I use a chlorine filter on the end of the hose that gets out some of the chemicals. It's probably not a great filter, but it's better than just raw dog tap water from LA water, which is highly toxic and disgusting. So I filtered the water, filled it up, but then I realized two things. A, you just leave that shit on, it turns into a fucking iceberg.
It does.
You can't regulate the temperature. The dial does nothing. I mean, you put the dial on low and leave it on 24 hours and it'll be all frozen. So then I got a timer. Then I had to play with the timing. And in LA weather, about 2 hours a night keeps it between 40 and 45 degrees, which is kind of a sweet spot for me. Although I found out to get a CT effect, you actually don't need it that cold, which is good news because that shit's brutal. So the timer to regulate the temperature. Then one day I'm in there and I'm looking up at the sun. I'm going, oh, this is amazing, man. I'm in this cold water. I'm getting the sun exposure. This is so healthy. And then I realized I'm not grounded. No fucking body of water on the planet is ever not grounded unless it's a man-made thing where the water's suspended somewhere. I'm like, that can't be good. I don't know why scientifically, but it's not natural. So I got a copper grounding spike and put that into the dirt next to it. And then there's a wire going into the tub with an alligator clip. So now I'm grounded. But here's the thing, depending on where you live, you got to make sure that you have a breaker on that wire because if lightning strikes the ground around your ass, you don't want to be sitting in that tub. The breaker is going to break the seal so that you're not grounded to the ground that now is full of electricity from the lightning. That's a really important part. And then the other part is to unplug it when you're in there. Just be on the safe side. You never know. You might fall through the bottom and the water goes into the fucking engine. You electrocute yourself. I don't know. It just seems safe to me. And then another part of it is to, I forgot this is before you fill it up, to take clear silicone and do all of the creases around it because eventually it'll start to oxidize and rust a little bit where there's cracks in the metal that it's made out of. Like some of the paint will wear a little bit thin. So you silicone seal that to prevent the rust. And then for the disinfection, I don't know where I got this idea, but I just take a whole bottle of hydrogen peroxide, like the 3% stuff from Rite Aid or whatever, and I just empty a whole bottle in there every time I change the water. And it seems to slow down the bacterial growth so that the water lasts like 2 or 3 weeks without getting swampy. Okay. And you'll know when it gets swampy because you get in there. When you open the lid, you're like, oh, swamp ass.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yeah, it's not, especially if you don't shower, like you said, before you get in there. The one that I have is at Story Fitness, my brother's gym, but really I'm the only one that really uses it. Everyone, I don't know, they haven't caught on to how dope it is. And I think that's the whole protocol. Yeah. That's awesome. And you can do all that for around $600-700.
Yeah. And that's my what I was getting at with the cost of ice.
Yeah, dude, that's what I used to do.
It's such a benefit. It's a fucking meditation hack. You can't think about anything else.
What temperature do you do and for how long?
We go between 35 and 55. And so I'll plug it in for probably 6 hours. Some ice will float around.
Yeah.
And we'll get in, at 35, I'll do probably 3 to 5 minutes. I've gone a little bit longer in the past, but I don't find that to be necessary. And then probably in the 10-minute range or when it's in the low 40s. And then 15, 20 minutes. Maybe 25 tops.
When you say we, who else is getting in there?
My wife.
Oh, she's down with this stuff?
Yeah, man.
That's cool.
It's the fucking move. It's one of the cool things that helps performance and longevity. Anytime we influence the mitochondria, we influence muscle function, how our body creates energy, and that also taps into cognitive energy.
Do you go in there after you work out, like after you lift?
Most people would say that you'd want to have at least a 2-hour window before or after, that kind of shit.
Right.
The truth of the matter is like now, and that can segue us in because I know we're running out of time, but how I train now, it's way different. I used to train 2 or 3 times a day, 5 days a week and have, one easy workout and then a day off. And A, that's unsustainable, but B, like I don't need to be in that kind of shape. So why would I fucking do that? It's not fun. And plus I was a piece of shit in between my training, I'm just dragging ass until I'm actually 30 minutes into a warm up. Then I feel awake and alive and can move.
Right.
So having a 3-year-old, that's not really conducive to being a good father if I show up and I can't play and I have to sit on the couch and and how many fucking dads come home from work and have no energy for their kid? It's a shitty situation, right?
Yeah.
So when I show up, I want to be the best version of myself. And I've actually found that the cold bath is my late afternoon, early evening cup of coffee. Like I can't drink coffee at that point and have good sleep. But if I hit 5 minutes in the bath when I get home from work, I've got a fucking ton of energy for my son until he's ready to crash. And then I do sleep better. So the timing of that has been essential for me.
That's interesting. I never have really done it much in the afternoon like that. It's usually a morning thing, like after I work out.
Yeah, everyone that
I've heard maybe that's why I don't have muscles, because I'll go work out and then stop the inflammation that would grow muscle. That's one theory. I don't know if that's true.
The only reason. You're good. You're good. Yeah. No, I might lift weights once or twice a week now. And that's not, I would love to do it more often. I truly enjoy it. Obviously you get a lot of endorphins and feel good chemistry going on every time you work out. But I don't really put myself through the grinder anymore. I have 30 to 45 minute workouts. Usually I'll try to pair that, killing two birds with one stone, with some sauna for 15 to 20 minutes right after. And there's a lot of good science that shows that can have an EPO-like effect on the body if you time it, because your core temperature is already up. So you don't necessarily have to hit an hour. You can just tack 20 minutes on the end of your workout.
That's like the niacin detox that I was doing.
We didn't get into that on our podcast. Dude. I want you to fucking drop knowledge on this.
That's right. Oh, fuck, man. Well, it's your interview, so we'll have to do it another time. Okay. But it's for anyone that wants to look it up, it's the L. Ron Hubbard original Scientology niacin sauna detox protocol. And
you might start seeing aliens.
You might start seeing aliens. Yeah, you might start watching a lot of Tom Cruise movies. There are a lot of known side effects. But essentially what you're doing is you're taking increasing doses of niacin every day for, however long you choose to do it. I did it for a month, up to from 100 milligrams to 3,000 milligrams, which would normally kill a horse, I think. But then what you're doing is you're exploding your fat cells, right? And you're releasing all these toxins, and then you flush them out in the sauna and then take some binders and stuff like that. So you just take a shit ton of vitamins, you take the niacin, you work out, then you get in the sauna. And it's not that hard. It's just the timing takes a little bit of discipline. But an easy way to find out about it, you can go on there. This guy Brett has a Facebook group, the niacin, I think it's called the Niacin Sauna Detox Group. And you can go on there and get tons of info if you guys want to put it in your show notes from your show or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, how'd you get your wife on board with the ice baths and the whole lifestyle? Was that a tough buy-in, or did she naturally gravitate toward it?
On board reluctantly with all the things.
Oh, cool.
She had never done any drugs growing up, never smoked pot, and her first ceremony was I brought an ounce to my coach for the Temes call, and it's something that I was telling her it's different. It's not about being high. It's spiritual. It's going to help us learn what's really going on inside and reveal a lot. And she was in. So we went to the reservation, and 3 of my teammates were supposed to come with us. All of them backed out while we were driving out there. So I had an ounce, and I was like, well, we'll just take whatever he gives us, and I'll give the rest as a thank you. So dude literally pulls 2 fucking caps out and says, thank you, and starts splitting the rest of the bag into pairs and blessing it with sage. And he has us eat each, divided, about 13.5 grams for her first experience.
God, no way.
And she's
she's never smoked pot or anything?
No, and there's,
dude.
They weren't ground. It's not like we got to drink it. We had to chew through that much.
They're nasty too.
20 minutes in, and she's looking at me, she's like, is this a lot of mushrooms? I feel like we've been eating for a long time. And I didn't want to freak her out. And I was like, no, whatever he's given us is the right dose. I'd have trust in him. He wouldn't give us more. You can't overdose. We're going to be good. And we were. It was a full moon ceremony. Absolutely incredible. And from that point on, that opened her up. It was something
dude.
Yeah, she knew there is power in this.
Yeah.
And when ayahuasca came along, she was like, I really don't want to shit my pants or puke violently for hours on end. So I'll let you go down the rabbit hole first. And if you can report about it back to me, then maybe I'll do it. And I couldn't talk about that experience for 2 weeks without just bursting into tears. That's how much it changed me.
Wow.
It was that deep, and mushrooms I find to be now, through working with ayahuasca, I can dose that in a way where it's just as powerful, but they're still their own thing. They really are. And that was the draw for her to want to do ayahuasca with me. And she's done it 12 times now. She's done 10 of them with me. And, a lot of growth through there. That revealed to me the way that I drank. That revealed to me all the things that you hear from other people. I don't think you should drink. I know what that's like. And and it's like, well, you're just a fucking nag. Maybe not. Maybe you can see something I can't, and that revealed that to me. And our relationship is so much better because of that. So now when I say, hey, this is really going to help us with fat loss, with longevity, with whatever, she gets it.
Right.
She listens
That's pretty smart, actually, because if you buy into the consciousness piece and have those aha clouds parting moments, then it does tend to kind of open you up to other things. I mean, those are those transformative experiences that are the gateway to the rabbit hole. So well done, my friend.
Yeah, lured her into ice baths and biohacks through drug use.
that actually makes a lot of sense. I'm single at the moment, but I look forward to someday, hopefully, you don't want a carbon copy of yourself, obviously, but I think it'd be cool to share those kind of experiences. I've not really had that prior where someone is on board with all the shit that I'm into, which is a little bit weird because I'm so into it. It's hard to kind of, if you're too separate and too different, then like how the fuck do you spend time together?
You watch a movie that you may not like, like shit like that. She's pulled me. It goes both ways.
What has she turned you onto?
Distance running and
no
yoga.
Way.
Yeah, she's doing yoga teacher training right now, and I've been helping her with that.
Oh, cool.
Jumping into home classes where her teacher has posted stuff online, and we'll do classes together. And that, anytime you go through experiences together that are lifting and ultimately make you more whole, that's the shit that matters.
Yeah.
That's the sweet spot. And I think the more things that you can do as a couple, whether that's hiking or being in nature or, going through ceremony, like all those experiences bring you closer.
Can I ask you something really personal and trippy?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you don't have to answer. You can just plead the fifth. But have you guys had sex on ayahuasca?
You can't have sex on ayahuasca.
Oh, you can't? Okay. It's not part of the tradition?
3 days before ceremony, no sex. 3 days after ceremony. But we've had sex on mushrooms, LSD.
Right.
The other night we had LSD, 2CB, MDMA, and Viagra. It's the first time for that. It was fucking insanely good.
Oh my God, bro.
Yeah.
Wow. And since she's on board with the lifestyle, I'm sure she doesn't mind you talking about that. That's fantastic. Wow, man. Good for you. I mean, I can just imagine, I think I asked that question. What I'm really getting at is the level of intimacy that must be possible when you're going into those dimensions with someone that you love and trust,
Yeah. And I think, there's a time and a place for that. Like one of the reasons Terrence McKenna talks about how you would archetype the best heroic dose is to be alone or be with just one other person or a guide in a dark place that has instrumental music. So you're taking out all these external factors.
Yeah.
That's how you do the work, right?
Yeah.
And so when it's at its strongest, that's not the time you're having sex or chatting about the experience.
Totally. I pretty much knew the answer to that one.
You're going to give play-by-play, but certainly as it's wearing off and you have closing circle and talk about your experience, like it's still in you. And heightened awareness, heightened sensitivity and feeling and touch. Like what a great way to capitalize on that experience.
Right. That's cool. What are you going to do when your kid's 16 and starts doing plant journeys and shit with his homies?
His first will probably be in the Amazon prior to the homies.
Right. Okay.
I want to teach him in a way where he understands the right way and the wrong way to do all these things.
Yeah.
And certainly,
not in a parking lot of a rap concert or something.
Yeah, man. He's going to hear all my stories. My parents did a lot of this shit growing up, and I never found out about it until I was like 20 or something.
Really?
And so that's something where you don't want to leave that off the table. You really need to know like this will do this will do that. And I've gone down the rabbit hole on all of it. And if you want to experience it, that's fine, but let's do it in a controlled setting. Even if you want to get fucking drunk, let's experience that in a controlled setting where you're not going to drive, you're not going to get hit, you're not going to get into a fight. And then you can feel what that does to your body the next day.
Right.
And really being like Kelly Starrett talked about this with his daughters, not forcing them to never eat gluten, but maybe it can hurt some people. It can be inflammatory. And then, that once they understand that, they go to a party as a 7-year-old, eat cake, and their stomach hurts.
Yeah.
And they shit weird. And they're like, all right, next time I go, I'm just going to try the frosting. And then even though that's pure sugar, it didn't fuck them up the same way.
Right.
Right. So you give them the knowledge and then let them make the choice for themselves, because ultimately everyone does walk their own path. But in doing that, you at least show them why there's this cause and effect is happening,
You reminded me of something my dad did. God bless him. He's such a trickster. When I was a kid, he dipped, he chewed skull like a lot of, cowboys did in Colorado at the rodeos and shit. And I always thought that was dope when I must have been like 7 or 8. And I was always bugging him, hey, can I try it? Can I try it? No, you can't. It's for grownups. And for some reason I hadn't stolen it, and tried it myself, which is bizarre. But one day he's like, you know what? We're on one of his construction sites and he was an excavator. And he said, you know what? You want to try it? Are you a man now? I said, yeah, I'm tough. Look at my cowboy boots, He said, all right. And he pulled out a big old fucking scoop of that, put it in my lip. And he did not tell me not to swallow.
Ugh.
And I'm sucking on that shit, swallowing the juice. And I got so sick that I didn't take that dip again for probably like 6 months. No, that's a joke.
I was going to say,
it didn't, his
circled back quick.
His shit didn't work, but it was illustrating, a similar principle that's like, hey, if you're going to do it, sure, do it with me and you'll find out what it's really about. But he was trying to trick me into not becoming a tobacco user, which failed miserably. So now that you're a dad, and I'm like, God damn, I'm watching that clock and thinking about Austin International Airport. I'm good though. I'm always kind of pushing the limits on my Jason Bourne way of traveling. So we'll be cool. I want to know, just as someone who is not yet a dad, and you not following the lead, mostly that your parents taught you about parenting. God bless them. We've talked about that. How do you learn about like how to be a dad? Are you reading books or listening to like Dad of the Week podcast or Paleo Papas? How do you learn this shit intuitively?
There's a lot of books. Everyone's got a fucking book on how to parent. Everyone's got a book on children's nutrition. I think nutritionally, Nourishing Traditions of Baby and Child Care by Sally Fallon. She's head of the Weston A. Price Foundation in New York.
That's a good place to start.
Fucking great, absolutely great. And certainly on the natural way to fix colds and fevers and shit that's going to come up because all kids get sick. That's been a real resource. In terms of parenting style and how to discipline and all that, I mean, there's talks on all sides, I think. But one of the best that we've read is Positive Discipline. I forget the author. And then one that really grabs me is by Gabor Mate and another doctor. And Gabor is fucking just a wealth of knowledge in all things. It's called Hold On to Your Kids. And they talk about attachment. When kids lose their attachment to their parents, everybody wants their kid to be independent and fucking go play with your friends and do all this other shit. So it's hands off because it's a lot of work. But the truth is, you want that attachment to stay until they're fucking out of the house, until they go to college. You want them to be attached to you because they listen. People wonder why kids don't listen now and why discipline doesn't work or fill in the fucking blank. It's because they don't respect their fucking parents anymore. So you create that attachment through 6 different methods. One of them is touch and play. And truly, by having that, that's when they want to follow the lead. That's when they say, can I do this, daddy? Or yes or no. And then they pay attention. It's not just to have a fucking robot there. You're still going to have, kids will be kids. They're going to push the fucking envelope and try to explore what they can get away with. That's totally normal. But that's been an excellent resource.
That's cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in the context of Gabor's work with addiction, which a lot of his stuff is centered around, in that it's all coming from trauma. And I kind of got that. I was like, oh, I was abused and this and that. But his concept of trauma is wide reaching. A lot of the trauma that he talks about, and correct me if I'm wrong, or you maybe can add to it, is that lack of connection, that lack of love is sort of this like reverse trauma in a sense. Like no one did anything to you. It's what they didn't do that was the trauma, which leads to so many,
There's science I reference quite a bit where kids who were beat by their parents felt more love than the rich dad who never showed up. The guy who let the nanny raise the kid, who was always off on vacations with his wife or his mistress and just wasn't there. Never disciplined him, never grounded him, never did anything, just didn't give a fuck. Like that science is real and it makes perfect sense when you understand it and look at it that way. Like the parents who beat their kids are disciplining their kids. They care about their actions. And it may not be the right way to go about it, but they're at least showing that they love them in some way.
Wow.
Wrong way or not.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow, cool, man. Well, I look forward to watching you and your kid's journey and seeing how that turns out. Do you think you're going to put him in public school? You have any, I mean, I know he's only 3, but where are you leaning on the homeschool? If we put him in school, versus... I'm
thinking Waldorf.
They have that out here?
Yeah, I like Rudolf Steiner quite a bit.
Yeah.
My wife was homeschooled, so that's a consideration. It's just a lot of work, and I think it would be nice to give her a break, especially with how much I travel now for work and things like that.
Right.
It's a lot to ask.
Right.
So, considering Waldorf and other schools, but, we were about a year away from preschool, 2 years away. So we'll see.
I got to ask this, and this is maybe a weird closing question because it's so loaded, but I just did an episode with this guy, Del Bigtree, on vaccines. And a lot of people think he's an anti-vaccine guy, but he's just, from what he explained in the show, and he made a lot of sense, he's a pro-research for safety guy. Like, let's actually do some research and not just throw this shit out on the market and inject kids with 75 vaccines by the time they're 5 or whatever. Was that a concern with you? How are you guys dealing with that?
I think spacing is really important, and I think that some vaccines kids need, some maybe not so much, and we see now with just same thing with the pharmaceutical industry. Like, oh, you got restless leg syndrome. You know, maybe you take this pill instead of, why do you fucking have that in the first place?
Right.
Right. We're treating the symptom, not the source. And I think a lot of vaccines, and they'll create a vaccine for everything. They really will. So what are the core ones that we need? How do we space those appropriately so they don't have the load of fucking mercury or ethyl mercury or whatever the fuck they're changing it up to, thimerosal, that kind of shit.
Right.
And because if why do they not give it to cancer patients or people with HIV? Because they can fucking die from it. They're immunocompromised. Well, a newborn is compromised. They're not fully developed yet.
Yeah, they're just building their immune system from day one.
That shit in their body right out of the gate, it can be a real issue. And I think spacing at the very bare minimum is crucial. You know, and I think more investigation needs to be done into that. I'm not, anti or anything like that. I think that there's, there certainly was a time and a place for them when we were sick as a society and had less sanitation. I don't know. I don't like where it's heading. It's a $30 billion a year industry. There's a lot of money on the table. Anytime you force people to do shit, then without consequence, we see how that science leads the way. It pushes the way. This is safe. Look at fucking glyphosate from Monsanto. Yeah. It's money that gets that into the food supply. Aspartame as a fucking artificial sweetener is a neurotoxin. Money is why it's in the food supply. Our government doesn't give a flying fuck about us, right? That's not a conspiracy theory. Money talks, right? So I think if people do their research and understand which things are necessary, and they talk about that in the book, Nourishing Traditions, Book of Child and Baby Care, you can at least have a better idea and understanding of what you feel is important and when the timing's right, and then take it from there.
How are the laws in Texas as far as that goes?
It's a little bit better. California just recently switched. Like you can't put your kid in public school. There's no medical grants, I don't think, anymore. You definitely can't do religious or spiritual exemptions.
Yeah.
Here is different. They're pretty right wing, but they also believe in, we should have a choice over what we put in our kids' bodies. So exemptions are utilized here. Again, that's a couple years down the road for when we got to look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's the advantage of having a more conservative state government in Texas. I think that's what's cool kind of about Austin is you have like a conservative state government, but a kind of liberal culture. It's interesting. Just from my, 4 or 5 days I've been here or whatever it's been. It's pretty cool. Well, man, I think that about does it, dude. You've taught me a ton of stuff today. It's really interesting getting to know you. And thanks so much for having me on your show too, by the way. In closing, who have been 3 teachers or teachings that you might send our listeners to go check out that have influenced you in your life and your work?
Ooh, that's a good one. Let me go first and foremost. I'll throw a plug to my boy Aubrey, who just released Own the Day, Own Your Life.
Great book.
It is a fucking phenomenal book. I've read it several times. I think it's a great place for people to start to really try to put together what the perfect day looks like. And there's many practices that I've taken out of that book that work really well. A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, which I'm sure you mentioned a ton of times, it's a book. It's the book that I've read the most out of any book. I've read it probably 11 or 12 times. And I still pick up things from it as I rehash that. I'll probably read it once a year now and continue to learn from it. It's been an excellent resource. Man, I don't know necessarily that I'd have a third for a person.
That's funny. The last guest that I interviewed, they got 2 and they were like, yeah, I don't know. 3 I can't do.
Yeah. Well, so, I could list like any one particular thing. Like, you want the keto reset diet by Mark Sisson.
Right.
You're going to eat carbs. You want to know the best way to do that? Wired to Eat by Rob Wolf. You want this? I think I got this for you. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But as far as like truly impactful things, those are the top.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. And where can people find you? Website, social media, all that stuff?
At Kingsboo on Twitter and Instagram. Don't really go on Facebook much. At On It on all the social media channels. I run Facebook Lives every other week through their channel on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. On It Podcast, and then onit.com.
Awesome, dude. Thanks for joining me. I got to get to the goddamn airport.
Let's do it, brother.
I'll see you next time.
Hell yeah.
Well, there you go, folks. As promised, as delivered, another bomb-ass episode of the Lifestylist Podcast, made possible because of the bomb-assness of Kyle Kingsbury. What a great dude. Had a really fun time sitting down for the couple conversations I had with him. Can't wait to get back out to Austin, and maybe he can teach me how to build a muscle or something. Dude has got that part figured out, as well as a lot of other life skills. as indicated in this episode. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Kyle if you ever hear this, dude. And thanks for the ride to the airport, man. That was a cool move. All right, so let's do a little announcement here. I get a lot of emails, direct messages about what's the best product for this, the best supplement, the best biohacking, my favorite saunas, red light devices, all of that. And after a couple of years of people asking me for my recommendations, because, you know, they trust me because I'm so into this shit and I'm such a freak of a researcher, that I finally just put links to every single thing that I personally use on my website. So if you go to lukestory.com/store, you're going to find the best of the best, everything that I use, have used, or that I've vetted. And what's really cool for you is you get discounts on a lot of this stuff, including, of course, all of the products that are represented by our sponsors. So you can find everything that I'm into over at lukestory.com/store. And what's great about it is that not only do you get discounts, but in some cases, when you click through the links on my store site, I get a small commission from purchases, which allow me to fund the show and pay for sound editing and graphic design and web hosting and posting crap on YouTube and all of the stuff that goes into this thing we call the Lifestylist Podcast. So thank you so much for supporting your own health and well-being as well as the show. And speaking of support and well-being, let's give a specific shout out to this week's sponsors. Of course, Onnit. I mean, duh. We got Kyle on the show from Onnit. So if you go to onnit.com/Luke, you're going to get 10% off all foods and supplements for a limited time. And you can also receive a 14-count bottle of Alpha Brain, which you can try for free. I love that stuff. It's good for the dome. Helps you to think clearly and be hella smart. It's a nootropic. It's all natural. It's awesome. I think it's the first nootropic I ever tried. So go to onnit.com/Luke. Next up, our old buddies at Organifi. Go to Organifi, that's with an I, Organifi.com/Luke. Save 20% with the code Lifestylist. Next up, Four Sigmatic. I had a coffee this morning with Four Sigmatic cordyceps mushrooms in it. Boom, there you go. I use it, I abuse it, I'm into it. Four Sigmatic. Go to foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. Save 15% off with the code Luke Story. So that's it. 3 sponsors this week: Organifi, Onnit, and Four Sigmatic. Our buddies. And honestly, I don't know how much you guys know about podcasting, but it gets very expensive to produce a professional show. I mean, I could just sit here and record this shit on my iPhone and then just upload it to the internet somewhere and you could listen to it in iTunes. But to do it the way that we do it over here, it's really expensive. And that's why we have sponsors for the show. They pay for time, and I'm happy to promote them because I believe in each and every one of them. Believe it or not, I do get requests to run ads sometimes on the show, and it's not in alignment with my scene, and I just don't do it. Thankfully, there's enough brands that are fans of the show and that I think are in alignment with not only what I'm into, but hopefully what you're into. So there you go. That's another episode. And I will lastly just remind you that this Friday, we've got a seriously radical show coming, a bootleg broadcast all about orgasm as a spiritual discipline with Eli Block. That's a bonus episode, not a regular show. It comes out this Friday. And then next Tuesday, I'm doing the be-all, end-all of Wi-Fi episodes. People have been asking for this. I did one early on last season. But this is like the mother lode of all things EMF. It's about how your cell phone and Wi-Fi are trying to kill you and how to stop it with Brian Hoyer. And this is a 2-hour interview where I ask every goddamn question you could ever imagine about how to protect ourselves from EMFs. And I think now we're kind of all in agreement that this is not a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. This is not paranoia. The fields that surround us biologically are not good for us, and in many cases do cause disease. They are at the root of disease. We just live in a totally unnatural environment. However, I'm not going to go live in the tundra outside of cell phone service or Wi-Fi anytime soon. So we have to develop and discover ways to protect ourselves. And Brian is an expert at doing that. He's a building biologist. So he's going to teach us not only about the dangers and get us all paranoid, but he's going to give us some great solutions. So to learn about orgasm this Friday and to learn about EMFs next Tuesday, make sure that you subscribe to this show. So whatever you're listening to this on, whatever device, whatever app, reach down right now, seriously, like right now as you hear my voice, and click subscribe. That way you won't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for listening to the show. Please tell a friend and do anything you can to help spread this information to the world. Help us to enlighten people with these truths, and the world's going to be a better place. Thanks. I'll see you on Friday with Eli Block. This episode of the Lifestylist Podcast was produced by podcastmasters.net.